beautiful people who show up and support these. So it's super awesome. As they've been going on more and more, there's like a consistent group of people who just are showing up and they're so interested. They want, so it's, I think, really, really very neat. So,
I love
all
it.
right, everybody. So first of all, good morning and welcome to today's Eat and Greet in the next hour or so. Hopefully we give you something that's really delicious and worth your visit. And I'm going to tell you right now, before you come for me, I realize I spelled September wrong. I'll correct it when we're done with the live, but that's just going to be what it is. So before we get jumping off on our Eat and Greet this morning, I want to remind you guys that the autumn equinox gifts are down in the description box down below. As well, the Eat and Greets from all week long are in the playlist, and they will be up by next week onto the podcast as well, including the one that we're going to do today. So without hanging out here too long, Miss Nura, welcome, welcome, welcome
Thank
to
you
the
so
channel.
much. Thank you. So excited to be here. Got my
Yeah, it was so fun. Oh, you brought your beverage.
I did, and I got my avocado toast.
Oh my God. And I got popcorn. Look, you guys, Nora's the best. She's gonna actually eat with me.
Yeah.
I feel good about that when people do that.
Taurus rising here.
Okay, yes, and I'm a Taurus, so all of our Taurusy parts are getting together. So it was fun because Nura and I actually met doing the summit for Power and Purpose. Is that right? I feel like that's the right title. Yeah, I think that's right. So we
Yeah,
met
with
doing
Christina
that.
Caudell. That's so fun.
Yeah, that was a load of fun, I thought.
Yeah, that was great. I learned so much, and I just loved that it was so focused on women's voices too.
Yeah, it was a really good deal. So we got to meet there, and it was just this neat experience where, again, I got to be introduced to someone who has been practicing, and I didn't know you were out there, and I don't think you knew I was out there. And then here we are, we're together, and it's like, wow, you say things and you know things. And it was just this beautiful experience,
I love that. I am all about these cosmic connections. I really feel like all of the people who are supposed to know each other are starting to know each other, like
Yeah.
rapidly.
Yeah, me too. It really is. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that because it is kind of this timing right now where it feels like it's very kismet. So it doesn't even matter your industry. It's like if it's time for you guys to be doing or talking about something together, you're kind of tribing up in a little way, even if it's not long term. It's like, oh, here, throw this grouping of people together and they're gonna say this stuff. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about what's coming up with the September moons and the moon cycles and stuff. And something that really made me want to invite you over is when you were talking about how you work with the lunar cycles with your clients. So I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about you and then tell us how you work with your clients with that. That is brilliant.
I would love to. So, I am an evolutionary astrologer, but also draw from the esoteric astrology branches and just Hellenistic astrology, pretty much all of the things I am open to learning, and all of the people and all of the perspectives. So, I draw from a lot of different places and have also been very inspired by intuitive skill building. So what I'm doing with the moon tracking readings is what I'm calling them, is basically it's this teaching people how to read their own chart through these monthly moon tracking cycle reading. So you can see at least the 4 major phases. So the first quarter moon, full moon, last quarter new moon. And then if people are ready for more, we dive into the trine
Right.
conjuncts. I try not to, blow people's minds too much the first time.
I know you're like, so we just got these 8 different phases, and they're like, oh my God, what?
Yeah, I try not to drop the word sesquiquadrate like in the first day. But if people are wanting that, I do. Um, and so we basically just talk about it through the lens of their own chart. So, layering that on top of their natal moon. And then if they have any of these major moon phase points, because I really look at them as emotional transition points too. And that way we can kind of get a sense of what our emotional story is going to be like for the month. And then we can also plan ahead and strategize. And I'm a woman, and my cycle, my hormones is, it follows its own cycle too. So I really believe in just having this awareness of all of our different cycles and how they start to layer on top of each other. And also, what does it mean? So right now, I believe the moon is in Sagittarius. What does it mean if the moon is in Sagittarius, but it's in a first quarter phase compared to if it's in a full moon phase or a new moon phase? So it's really fun.
Yeah, that's neat. And so as you're working with your clients with this, are they starting to find some success with that and being able to tap in and tune in, or kind of what's the response to that? Because I know I do lunar phasing, especially the tracking, the natal to the progressed phases and how that whole thing is going. And people are often like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. I don't know why I'm pushing so hard. That's not the phase that I'm in. So what's your experience?
I find people respond really well to it because there are certain things that we just need to learn by hearing it multiple times. So if we talk about, oh, the first quarter moon, this is crisis in action. I know that there was this thing, this information that was divinely seeded to me at the new moon, but I'm going to really start taking action on it at the first quarter. So people start to hear that, oh, okay, I know, first quarter moon, crisis in action. Like you just start to internalize these things when you hear it enough times.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is really incredible. So I'm glad. And you know what? In the chat, it's already like lighting up. And somebody said, Nura's medicine is so affirming. So yay. Oh, that is such a good compliment. And the summit, it was brilliant. So we had a good time there for sure. So today, though, we're going to jump in first and just have a look at what's going on with the September moons. And then we're going to kind of walk through in between all of the phasing and how to work with that. So you guys can see a little bit of what Nura does. And I'm going to be over here having my popcorn being blown away. It'll be good. So let's start with the big ones for sure and talk about maybe what's happening there. So we're just actually like what, a week away from this next moon. Is that right? Where's the calendar? I don't know. I think I'm in a COVID calendar time, so I'm like, it's all Tuesday, you know?
Yes. Yes. Like, so right now we're just on that cusp of moving out of that first quarter moon phase. The moon is actually 29 degrees Sagittarius. So we're about to shift today within the next couple hours. But if we started the cycle back with the most recent new moon about a week ago, that was still in Leo season. So I always find it really interesting when we have a new moon that's carried through a new solar season, but it's carrying the energy and the medicine of the previous sun cycle. So we're starting this Virgo season still with Leo emotional energy. So it's still big, fiery energy, and it's going to do this, shift from that fixed Leo into the mutable signs. So that's always an interesting time. I'm curious to hear what has it felt like for you?
Absolutely. No, I was just thinking about it as you said it too, because we were talking before how there's definitely been this shift to Virgo season coming in, but it has been just weeks of it's like, yeah, the practical's getting done, but there's still some stuff
Mhm.
happening and going on in here, and it's still very fiery. And I think that's important to remember that we get in big cycles, we get longer, but we essentially get these 4 weeks to really be with that until we do culminate at this full moon again. So I'm just thinking about the fact that it's like, that moon as well was so linked to Mars and Saturn. So I think that's an energy that I'm still aware of in my own space and even in my children, that there is still this sense of big energy, but there's a little frustration with it too. It's like we're not quite to what's next, right? So that stamp really, it was sealed for that 4 weeks. So yeah, that is really interesting.
Yeah, I feel that too. Like the Mars Saturn thing, casual. That casual, massive tensions in what we're trying to do and who we're trying to be right now, individually and collectively. But Yeah, I found that new moon in Leo, it really just sets the scene. So if you know where you have the moon, the new moon in Leo in your chart, so where did that happen? Then you can start to look, okay, now I know this is where I'm going to have this first quarter moon in Sagittarius. So what, and now we're kind of, we're retroactive right now. What has happened for you in the last week that is showing you, okay, this is what is growing for me right now. And this is what's hard right now. And so with Sagittarius in the first quarter moon stamp energy, because this is going to kind of lead the energy for the next week up until that full moon, what belief systems are coming up, because this is Sagittarius. How are you connecting with natural law? What's your relationship like with just going outside, being in nature? Do you feel like you're able to move forward with your life? Even in the body, Sagittarius ruling the hips and the thighs, like, is there something physical happening,
Mhm.
right, with those energies? So you can start to see all of these layers and then look at, okay, how does what might be happening in my physical body relate to what's happening in my emotional, mental, spiritual bodies? And then now how can I strategize? Because I know that this full moon, where the culmination of everything that I'm working with right now is Pisces.
Yeah, which is like the womb. It's like, you come to Pisces and you make it all meld in that womb. So really bringing it all home, but shedding all that light on it so you can see it as well.
Yeah, I love that. That feels really inviting to me personally. I'm into that.
I'm into that. Yeah. Well, and so if you do not remember this, the Leo new moon was at 26 degrees. So you're going to want to check that out at that 26-degree spot in your chart. And as we go through and we come back to the full moon is going to be at 10 degrees. So you can spot that in your chart as well. And I love what you were saying about bringing it to the first quarter, because that moon as well, Mercury was conjunct. So really this idea on the Gemini Sag axes is really happening. We are rethinking, re-speaking, like rediscovering so much. But that moon would have been like, well, what's yours? Right?
Mm,
Like, what's your special sauce? And now, like you said, carrying all of that forward. And then we're going to be like, here, meld it, take
mhm.
it, get it ready to do that, because the next moon we're going to have is a full moon in Aries with Mars retrograde, as we get into the October timeframe. So that's going to be, he's going to want some action. He's going to be like, what are you doing?
Yes. That actually reminds me. I wasn't sure if I was going to bring this up or not, but I pulled some tarot cards just to kind of feel into the vibe from another space. And I pulled the reverse hermit for this September. And I was like, that's really interesting, because reverse hermit is like, are you taking enough time to reflect on you? Or are you taking too much time to reflect and not enough action? I really feel that first quarter moon, and what you said, what's yours, what's not yours, the Mercury component, the mental discrimination. But are we too trapped and locked in our thoughts and not allowing that Sagittarian intuition to come in? Or are we, kind of overdoing it? Are we, you know, where are we on that spectrum, and kind of evaluating that for ourselves? So I feel like this will be an interesting time. I mean, Virgo is that yin, mutable energy. So there's something internal. There's an internal process, and that internal process is infused in the solar energy, which is what is shining on the moon the whole time. So when we start to blend those two archetypes, so we take Virgo shining on Sagittarius, so internal, retrospection on belief systems. Okay, great. Now, when we move into this full moon, Virgo shining on Pisces, what is that going to mean? So this is going to be timeless truth. How do you connect with spirit? How do you connect with perhaps collective service? This is a big one. I think most people that I've been connecting with really want to know who they are in all of these changes in the world, and they want to know how to put their best foot forward without stepping on other feet.
Sure, sure.
And just offer their best in service, but still kind of figuring out what that is. um, so I have a feeling that this full moon might give us a little bit of that greater clarity, because it's Pisces, right? Ruled by Neptune. Neptune really rules that process of disillusionment. And Neptune is involved here in this full moon as well.
All the involvement, yes.
And retrograde too. So there's something about going back in to really feel into our connection with our higher self, our connection with perhaps the unity consciousness, remembering that we're all together here on this planet doing things together, even though our individual stories are going to be very different and unique. So we might feel this back and forth of being kind of pulled into the collective and then coming back into ourselves, like, what's me, who am I? But then, not going to the extremes of like, oh, in order to understand myself, I have to go put my head in the sand over here.
Which is such an interesting concept, I think, right now in the United States, specifically because we've got an election coming up. And this is a place where it can be very polarized. One side thinks they have all of the answers, but then also there's this whole other body that is like just outside of that going, well, what do I believe? What do I think? If nothing's true, who has the truth? Forget it. I'm not gonna participate. I'm not gonna vote. I'm not gonna whatever, right? So you can see it even right now, if we look at that transpersonal world where it's kind of all of us in that political space right now, which is so interesting, I think, right now. Because the other piece of that I was thinking about at this moon is that there's sextile from this moon to Uranus. Just
Just
is
throwing it in
real,
there.
right? Just breaking it out there. Plus, when the planets have sex, that's good for us. So it's like, not only is there a pocket of opportunity here, but we're likely going to use it, but we're going to need to use that to kind of break out of that fixed Taurian space where we were maybe doing more I'm going to just lay low, or I'm going to just do what I've always done. And it's really asking us to think from our homes to our communities to our countries. What do I believe here? Right? What's mine? So what an interesting time from the personal to the global right now.
Yes. And I love what you said so much, that kind of reevaluation of our priorities, what's important to us, and how are we going to take action on that too. I feel like that, Mars being in that pre-retrograde shadow phase is very it's already happening. Even though we know we have Mars stationing retrograde in a couple weeks, we're going to feel that already. Like this kind of back and forth, like one foot is on the gas, one foot is on the brakes, stopping and starting. And it's a little bit awkward, but I do find it helpful to know that we're all in it together.
Yeah.
Like nobody's got it perfect. And it really engenders this compassion, even for politicians. That's a slippery slope, I realize, but.
Which is so funny because anymore, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I got all excited. Anymore, as I continue to just watch with like physical eyes meets intuition, the political climate that's happening, there's this space in between, Nura, where I'm like, both of these parties slash everybody on that stage does realize they need the other one, right? And it's like, as you're hearing the Republican, Democrat, not to fire anybody up this morning, but it is like, wait, hold on a minute. There's this conversation that's not happening with words where I think they realize they do need one another, which is so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I hear you there. I think that's something that's a possibility for a lot of people, to just realize that we do all need all of the others, even if we completely disagree. I think that something that I've been really tuning into with the energy of Virgo in general, which I think will really pertain to that new moon in Virgo at the end of the season, is that ability to discern and discriminate what are the best words. We all have a lot to say, but are we just throwing them out there, just, throwing paint at the wall and hoping to see what sticks? Or are we being very conscious and intentional with what we're saying?
Yeah, well, it is definitely just as we change the culture, our words have been changed. I mean, literally how we speak has been changed. We're wearing masks in most of the places. So we're having to get eye to eye with our fellows and realize different truths, because that's all that's in the eyes is the truth, right? So it makes us more conscious of maybe even what I'm saying is masked a little bit. I have to speak up. And if I have to speak up, I have to really have the right words to say to communicate. It's this interesting dynamic with these whole masky things and where we've been sent in how we communicate the best with each other, but I also think ourselves, in that Pisces energy. One of the things I'm talking about in the September videos is under Pisces. I think it asks us this question: where am I suffering because I'm not actually being of service in this area? So, where can I surrender to win, including how I regard myself, right? How I allow myself off the hook a little for not being perfect, or for not, you know, I did the best I could with what I had at the time, is kind of the idea. So super, super a lot during the season already. You know what I mean? Not to mention, I do think when you take a moon, you sextile it to Uranus, that already gets exciting. We've got Venus square Mars at the time. Venus is opposite Saturn. Mars is square Saturn. There are delays that will come up, but that sextile will keep this thing kind of exciting. Like, nobody's gonna have the chance to be bored over the next like 4.5 weeks.
It's definitely not boring. I really love thinking about the sextiles too, the nature of, that opening sextile compared to the closing sextile. So this moon, when it's the full moon, it'll be at that closing sextile with Uranus. So that's like this karmic fruition point. So we're going to see some of things perhaps, or some closure in some aspect of the cycle that was began, at least over the past couple weeks and months too, because they're all linked to each other. And I really like thinking about sextiles as opportunities, but they're those opportunities that you have to catch. So there's this opportunity to really liberate ourselves, to really liberate our beliefs, but it's also challenging because some of those beliefs make us feel really safe, even if they're illusions, but we're very attached to them. And that's that nature of Uranus and Taurus, that fixed, like, I'm going to stay with what I've decided maybe 10 years ago because I feel safe. And that's totally valid. I mean, we all need that feeling of
Sure.
safety. But there is that friction right now because we're coming up against this awareness where we have to make the changes. It's a famous Uranian quote that choose change before change chooses you.
Isn't that the truth? Don't
Yes.
be over here waiting for change to choose you.
It's like very tower card, right? Like we have a choice. We see that things are changing and crumbling before us. We could have a choice. Do we just want to wait in the building and see if it collapses on us? Or do we want to be proactive? I feel like, oh my gosh, I came across a blog the other day and it was called like The Sane Prepper. And I was like, I love this.
Oh, yes, I have heard of that. I've never checked it out, but I have heard of it. I'm going to have to send my husband over there.
Yeah, because it doesn't hurt to be prepared without feeling like you're too far into like the doomsday place, you know?
Yes, I do know. Oh my gosh, I know. And I've got a couple friends who are, oh man, they're down to the doomsday level at this particular moment in time. One of them, I was actually just talking to her, and she's like, I gotta reel it in. I gotta reel it in. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. I mean, you're basically doing life in like your underwear on a daily basis. So you gotta like maybe reel it in a little, prepare, but
Yeah. And I think that full moon in Pisces too asks us to have faith in the best outcome. There's this requirement to surrender, to, remember that sometimes miracles happen. Sometimes the bad things happen, but sometimes the good thing happens. So having that faith, kind of remembering that there is that, deus ex machina sometimes happening, that God in the machine, like sometimes that happens. And I think that when we kind of set ourselves to that in our own lives, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've done any Course in Miracles work, but there's
Yeah.
this like being miracle ready. I really associate that with the highest wisdom of Pisces. When you're miracle ready, it shifts the perspective enough where you start to look for the things that could go right rather than focusing on what could go wrong, which we know is a little bit of the shadow of Virgo. I mean, bless Virgo. Virgo makes us our best. Sometimes though, we can get a little stuck in the like itty bitty shitty committee, like things are all gonna go
Yes.
bad.
Yeah, we're all gonna die. It's going down. The ship is over. Yeah, we've definitely seen it. So I love that too, because we have the opportunity at this Pisces full moon to also let intuition guide us, right? There's a space for intuitive guidance that will take us to what's next. And the challenge, I think, for all of us with those other aspects coming, across this moon is truly trusting the intuition. Doesn't mean that it looks like what we think it should look like, but to trust that that intuitive vibe is taking us to the very next right thing for us, for all of us, for whatever it is. But I think that that's a challenge, because that frustration, with the other aspects around it, does challenge relationships. It really does. So it's the, me with me, but also me with my fellows in a bigger place. So to trust that intuitive vibe, even if it's like, okay, this maybe looks like a big old mess, and it's like, nah, it's actually the exact right message, you know? So that is, I think, a little bit of a challenge we run into at this moon. But if we can do and take it to that higher octave, we'll have an opportunity under the Virgo new moon to say, okay, now piece by piece, step by step, here's how we're going to take that intuition and that faith that it was going to work out, and change it into something tangible that we can work and heal.
I love that so much. And something that I've been really turned on to lately is the message about how we can program water. So I know probably many of you have heard of, Dr. Emoto's water experiments. And there was a great documentary, it's on Gaia now, that is, I think it's called The Secret of Water. And they go through all of these different experiments to show how words like love, I love you, and thank you, and gratitude, and like classical music, like Mozart, you take your water and then you can, freeze it and put it under a microscope, and you see that these crystal shapes are beautiful. And then you kind of compare that to, words like hate or anger, frustration, and it creates these really disharmonic shapes in the water. And it just really got me thinking. Something that they mentioned in the documentary is that water has that memory. And every time water touches anything, so whether it's a human body or an animal or earth, or the air, it's taking in that information. And so I really feel that Virgo Pisces, it's that axis of healing and service, but I feel like there's something to it about the combination of bringing information together, right? Because they are both those mutable signs. And there's that, Mercury rulership of Virgo with the Jupiter/Neptune rulership of Pisces, kind of bridging rational mind or logical mind with this intuitive mind. And there seems like there's this opportunity to just connect ourselves with unity consciousness via this global information network that's really emerging right now. And then
Yeah.
this is where we use the skills and the gifts of Virgo, which is that discernment, discrimination. What is for me? What is not for me? What is good for me to focus on right now? And maybe I'll pin this for later. I don't need to focus on this rabbit hole right now. We kind of take it day by day. That's that Virgo season strategy. And I really feel like with this moon with Virgo, we get this opportunity to create strategic imagination, putting them together.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
really
Oh, I love that strategic imagination. Yeah, because in the energy of Pisces, or the Neptunian field, before anything is something else, it was imagined first. That's what I teach, is that before a chair was a chair, it was just an imagination. Now we got all these damn chairs, so like, thank God for them, right? But we kind of have this place where, oh, I just love that strategic imagination.
And then I feel with this last quarter moon with Gemini, so it's not quite conjunct the North Node in Gemini, but it's, it's within that 15-degree orb. It's at 18 degrees Gemini. So it's within actually 8 degrees or math. That's what I'll be
Just
learning
math.
this Virgo season.
Just math.
And I think that this North Node in Gemini time is really asking us to look at all of the different ways that we can communicate. But then if you combine the Virgo sun shining on the Gemini moon, now we're taking the internal and the external rulers of Mercury, and we're combining them into this third quarter moon, which is linked with crisis in consciousness in the evolutionary astrology paradigm. So this is, how do we take all of this information and synthesize it? Basically, how do we be here and discriminate and make sense of all this information without falling into overwhelm? And so I really feel that we have this opportunity at this third quarter moon to become very aware of where our pain points are, where our trigger points are, and maybe we can make a plan. I actually once spoke to an amazing, I call her my Gemini spirit guide. She's a woman. She's got a lot of Gemini in her chart. I'm like, the Geminis out there, I think are probably finding that a lot of people are coming to them to learn, because Geminis for their whole life, they are in these situations where they're having to kind of weigh duality and find synthesis and learn how to communicate with people in a respectful and graceful way, even if you disagree, so there's that. Now we're all learning that, but it requires this finesse, this ability to shapeshift to meet the moment or to meet the person. Like, oh, I'm going to speak this truth differently to somebody who I know has studied astrology compared to somebody who hasn't, or to somebody who I know is on this side of a political party, or somebody who's over here. Like, you have to kind of meet the person to be able to know how to show up. And that's not necessarily being fake or being two-faced. That's just showing up as a teacher. This is, if you've spent any time in the education realm, this is what we call differentiation. Everybody learns differently, and we do need to show up a little bit differently with all of the people. So I think that's something that we're all learning right now. And I think we'll start to slowly see the shift. Hopefully, I'm always praying for a soft landing with things. I'm always praying for I'm like an eternal optimist,
Yes.
I really believe, though, that we'll start to get it together. That we'll learn the kind thing to say, even if you disagree.
Right? Like the right way to disagree, essentially. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. I do think personally there is a wrong way to disagree, but then you could also say there's lessons in everything. But that's a whole nother. I mean, does it always have to be the hardest lessons? Does it always? That's the question, I think.
Yeah, we can make it a little easier on ourselves, I think. And I think really recognizing, where is it in us that gets triggered when we feel wrong? That is very Sagittarius Gemini. Because our ego attaches so strongly to being right, because being right means safety, means belonging, means love. So now if we're wrong, we're actually afraid of rejection, of not being loved, of some bad, horrible thing happening. And that's really a subconscious pattern that we might not even be aware of when we're just reacting to what somebody is saying. So I feel like all of these lessons is very, these psychological awareness really is that highest blending of the internal reflection of Virgo and then the external execution of Gemini.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's neat because, that high Gemini energy with the node as well, Gemini is usually come into their incarnation having to practice listening as well. So this is y'all's season. You have 10,000 people who want to talk to you and know how you do what you do, but it requires a good amount of just listening to others, which is so interesting, because then as we come to the Virgo new moon and we do see that other embodiment of Mercury, but in that grounded, like earth, but also mutable kind of way, it's like, oh, you're wondering about this, and this is how I can help you see the agility to flow to that. So really, I just love it still. What did you say? Strategic imagination. I'm on fire for that right now. So when you see that all over Twitter later today, you'll know. You'll know that I got it right here, folks.
Yeah, let's make it a hashtag.
Yeah, it's going to be be the hashtag of the day. So as we look really specifically, just to kind of break this down in case anybody's just showing up, as you look very specifically at um, this full moon coming up in Pisces, what suggestions do you have for us?
Mm. I really feel that what you said with the listening is spot on. A lot of people are wondering about how to be of service, and they're thinking that it has to come only from within. And I think that we can make it a little bit easier for ourselves by just putting our ears to the ground and listening. What are the people asking for? and respond to that. There's an excellent book by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and what is it called? It's Braiding Sweetgrass. And she talks about all of the different gifts of all of the different animals. For example, the eagle has the ability to fly high. So, what's the eagle's responsibility? Oh, to commune with Great Spirit or to see what's up ahead, right? And so, when we consider, okay, people in the world are asking for help, what is our gift? What are we good at? What are we naturally good at that we don't have to really jump super far through these hoops or out of our center to give? That is what our responsibility is, to show up and give that. And I feel like that's that Virgo Pisces desire to serve and heal. And you said it so beautifully, like, where are we suffering because we're not in service? I think that sometimes we've kind of latched on to these false ideas about how we have to show up in the world. But there's a beautiful Pisces lesson. You just give by being who you are. You are enough simply by being who you are. You just show up, be nice.
Right? Yeah.
Very simple. And we can overcomplicate things all we want, but a lot of times I think, especially right now where we're really having to learn presence, like, we just have to respond to the moment, because the moment is changing day by day. I don't know if my daughter's going to be going to school full time. I don't know if I'm going to be going back to a work in a certain setting. Like, I can't plan and strategize as much as my Virgo South Node would like to.
Oh my God, I'm a Virgo rising. I'm like, I need to know things. Stat.
It might just not be available for a little while. And so how can I, it's very like serenity prayer vibes, how can I accept what I can and cannot change, and have the wisdom to know the difference, and just take, the action that I know that I can take. And there's another great quote. I'm just like feeling the quotes right now and these book references. But
They're good book references.
yes, they really are such great books. But don't let what you can't do stop you from what you can do. I forget who said that, and I'm sorry, crediting you on the etheric realm. Sorry.
No, that's awesome. That's beautiful. For things for us to look at and look into as we're here at this moon, as the full moon comes along, where can you surrender to win? Because it goes both ways, right? Where you have this skill, this talent, this whatever you have trained into yourself, have innately, whatever, you've got it, and you may not be even using it anymore. Maybe you haven't even thought about it for a decade. If it's useful to somebody who needs it, give it. At the same time, if you will open your mouth and say, here's what I need to know, right? Surrender the ego to win the information. Somebody else will say, oh, I know how to do that here. And it's going to be no skin off of their back either. It's this interesting place where we get to take what we think is like old news or just an old skill or something like that, and somebody actually needs it. It's like the trash to treasure analogy. It's like, that's your trash back there. You're like, I haven't done that in 30 years. And somebody else is like, oh my God, this is literal gold.
Yes.
So where at this moon can you surrender to win? We do have these aspects that I think will put some pressure on different relationships. Ask yourself in it, where can I surrender to win here? Do I want to be right? or do I want to be happy?
Yes.
And typically what I find is when I do what is actually like spiritually right, I get to also be happy. But when I do what that old Stormy Grace ego thinks is the right thing, or I say what I think is the right thing, because I'm going to just show you, really inform you. And when I come at it from that place that lacks that beautiful Piscean gift of intuition, of sensing my other fellows, I am not usually very happy after it.
Yeah. And that's a great indicator too. Like following our emotional guidance system like that, like we're going to feel when it was really the highest or most ideal or right thing to do in that moment. And something with the whole mutable cross, right? That Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, Sagittarius, I mean, we're working long term with this Gemini, Sagittarius energy for the next 16 months. And I feel that so in Virgo season, we're going to be working really strong with it. Also in Sagittarius season, we'll be working Gemini season, Pisces season. But this is creating squares between
Yeah.
where we're coming from and where we're trying to go. And we're probably going to make mistakes. It's probably going to be a little bit messy. And there's going to be this creative tension. But something that I love that one of my mentors shared with me is that when we look at squares, and oppositions, yes, they create this tension, but it's kind of like if you had these different team members, they have the same goal. They're trying to push a boulder up the mountain. They're just going to have completely different ways of doing that. And they might not even be able to see each other. They might not even be able to communicate. Maybe they literally speak different languages. How creative can they get to achieve that goal? That's really what it's asking for. So we have these creative tensions to support us in achieving our goals right now. And it's going to come with the mutable cross through our words, through information, through communication patterns, through our ability to adapt and change, because that's the nature of mutability. It's that sign that says, okay, I understand the fixed and the cardinal. Now I'm going to blend them together and throw a little bit of extra sauce in there. And it's
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
be it's going to be a wild card. That's the nature of mutable energy. But
Yeah.
it also, I think, affords us this ability to know, okay, every day is a new day and we can try again tomorrow and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, and at this new moon, as we get to it on the 17th, we get it in Virgo, and it's trine Saturn. And so
Mhm.
I think that Saturn's like, all right, I see you trying. Let's help ground that bad boy. I'm going to give you an opportunity to try it again because you learned at some of the squares. Because I do love that squares make us take some action. It's like, hey, you got to do a thing here because we can't stay right here. Right.
Mhm.
So you're right. You do get very creative. And then we take some action and we get like 4 weeks down the road and this Virgo moon gets trine Saturn. And he's like, all right, I see what you're trying to do.
Mhm.
Let's try this. And let's get this grounded, and give you the opportunity to get this really grounded so that this can achieve. So that imagination, strategic imagination meets the grounding of Saturn, who at that moon is still retrograde. So I think we really get to see what's the creative application to these things we've been looking at for some time, because he's not showing us anything new, right? He's just flipped back. He's like, we've been looking at this for a couple years. Now, have you come up with a different solution or action plan to that? Then we'll get to see just not too long after that new moon, Saturn come out of retrograde. And that's when I think we know. And I think that's that sense that many of us have, that it's like, oh, there's going to be like a deep breath that gets to start happening, October, November timeframe as everybody gets out of retrograde, because the strategic imagination in action, I think, will be in place then, and we start to find our way forward.
I love that so much. I am 100% on a mission to shift the public opinion of Saturn, because Saturn really helps us ground and really helps us. Like Saturn acknowledges our efforts, like you said. Like, I see what you've been doing. You've been trying, you've been working on this for a long time. And I think when we're in the daily flow, the daily grind, it's kind of easy to forget about the long-term plan. the
Mm.
long-term vision, especially when there's so much uncertainty on unknown. But there is still this Saturnian force that we can tune into, and it's Capricorn. So who are the wise elders that maybe you can
Right.
ask for help? There are people out there. There are resources out there who can help, who that's literally what they're here for. And we are in this changing of the guard, the passing of the torch to the next generation right now. There's a lot of people receiving the baton. There's a lot of people handing it off. There is a lot of this energy moving. So it's available. And I really believe that, I mean, manifestation has changed a lot in this, transition into Aquarian age times. Like, we can Google for help.
I know, right? You're
We
like,
can
I'm trying to
we
manifest
can
like a
Google.
whatever. Just Google it.
We can pray and we can Google, we can talk to people and we can tune into our higher selves. We can use all of the resources, use all of the strategies, and it doesn't have to be one or the other, right? We can ask for help because we're all in this together, and we can lean into ourselves. So it's just so important that we know where we are in that spectrum. Where are we? Are we the helper? Do we need help? Everywhere is great. Everywhere is great to be, because we're all there at some point in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the world being, I think, as big and as open and us being as connected as we have never been able to be, there are really down to the tiny questions about how things are done in other cultures, the resources available. I think about that with Saturn going into Aquarius. We really become a very big human directory of resources for the entire planet, right? I don't know how to make this dish this way. I can definitely reach out on social media and say, is anybody in India, what do you normally put in this in the way you've learned to make it? And you know what I mean? And more, we can see those things already flashing and popping off as we're just able to ask people for the help that we need. Or students and teachers are now linked in that as well, if we'll put that creative strategy into place here. So
Mm-hmm.
neat.
And even these kinds of things that you've been doing, Stormy, it's so good. I feel that there's so much magic that happens when you bring people together just to have a conversation. And it actually does kind of shift the paradigm of, this is what it looks like to teach, and this is what it looks like to learn. And we're shifting that. We're starting to realize that every human is a resource in and of themselves.
Yeah,
And
it's
we all,
really lovely.
yeah, we all do know these archetypes too, because we've seen it, we've lived it. And so that's what I love about tracking the moon, because I think it's the easiest way to learn astrology. If you know where the sun is and you know where the moon is, you're an astrologer.
Check. That's right.
Yes. And there's so many strategies. Speaking of strategic imagination, I mean, whatever your notebook looks like, but I mean, get it going. Write down the date, write down where the moon is, where is the sun, how are you feeling, what's happening in your life. And all it really takes is for you to do that for 1 month. Now you've witnessed the moon in all of her phases and all of the signs, at least for 1 month. And now you can say, oh, I did feel that way when the moon was in Capricorn, trine the sun in Virgo. I felt really down to earth. I felt really like I was able to give my life structure that I could carry forward, right? Because the moon will be soon moving to conjunct Saturn in the next 2.5 days. So we'll get this Saturnian wisdom download in these next 2.5 days. And it's kind of like a snippet of what we'll also feel, over the long term, with the sun coming to trine Saturn as well. So we get to have these opportunities to feel into what's happening, and then we get the direct experience. We're not just receiving secondhand information, if we are our own primary researchers. And I think that's a really big piece. It can empower people, especially in an age of so much disinformation. If you get your information from yourself.
Yeah, get your information from yourself. And I will tell you, I look at YouTube and I look at all of these other outlets as well, where we have opportunities to kind of broadcast ourselves. And I'm watching our fellow humans come together and say, no, hold on. That is not accurate information. And they get together with their pieces and they're like, here's what all of us found out. And sometimes that picture looks very different than what we've been presented, like maybe in the media or something like that. And it's like, whoa, we have tribed up a little bit here to not only trust ourselves and that intuition to say, I'm not sure if that's accurate. I'm not sure if there might be more to that. And our fellow humans are doing it too. So in that very communal way, right? We're going for this deliciously factual kind of representation of information instead of just handing that power off to media or to people we saw as gurus, whatever. It's like, well, hold on. I can think, I can reason, I can gather information, and I've got this whole globe to gather it from. So it's this awesome time where I think as we focus on here, where do I surrender to win in this season? It's like, I don't need to be right all the time because somebody else is gathering information too. And I bet we can collab those things and present something pretty factual. Sparkle fingers and everything.
All the
Yeah.
snaps.
Mhm. All of them.
I feel that the North Node in Gemini too, really anchoring our guiding light, our guiding force right now. If we combine all of the strategies of listening, asking questions, finding the other people, we'll start to see this collective shift where now all of a sudden people can really use their own intellect and really lean into their own wisdom. And hopefully that doesn't mean that we throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, we still can lean into, oh, this person's been researching this for 30 years. They do probably know what they're talking
Yes.
about. So we can integrate that South Node Sagittarius and the North Node in Gemini to understand that there are so many different ways of knowing. And if we show up with an earnest curiosity, we can really learn more than we ever thought that we could. There's so much opportunity, and we just have to catch it. It's here for us.
Yeah. And that is really in part how the eat and greets have continued to kick along here was this idea. We had a lot of racial tension that was going on, and all industries started to look around and go, what's going on? And what it sparked for me personally, as I was like, well, hold on. I don't care if you're black, white, brown, or whatever. You've been doing this for 40 years. We need to know about that. Do you want to come talk? And so, whatever that looks like for you in your life, where are you just like, well, hold on. There is information to be had. There is connection through that information to be had, and go and get that. Go and
Mm.
share that.
Yes. Yes. Oh, it's so beautiful that you say that too. I think it really hits on this new understanding of all of the different ways of knowing. And that's kind of, if you think of that natural inconjunct between Capricorn and Gemini,
Yeah.
we're making an adjustment in that ways of knowing. Like, there are so many wisdom traditions that, under the guise of science and since the Enlightenment, and this is a quote from Stargazer Lee. She calls it the Dude Standardization Project. Where we just learn, like, if we don't understand it scientifically, it's not truth, right? So we've been working on healing that for the past couple hundreds of years. And I would argue that it's very linked to this Pluto and Capricorn revolution that we're coming up against. But we get to go back and remember, wow, there have been these wisdom traditions, for example, with farming, people who know, okay, you only ever take half and no more, because that allows the rest to flourish. Or we know, that we can gain wisdom from nature directly, right? And we don't necessarily have to break it down into all of the different constituents and pieces in order to understand it. There's, people have been studying astrology for thousands of years. So there's wisdom about how to kind of lean into the pattern as it's unfolding, and we can kind of prepare ourselves. So we don't necessarily need to lean into only one way of knowing. And that being said, we can integrate, science and spirituality.
Yep.
We can integrate all of these things. That's really the highest possibility of acknowledging all of this beautiful information. So I'm personally very motivated by this and very excited, and I'm seeing it. I'm
Yeah.
seeing it happen.
It's amazing to watch it kind of unfold, I think, with sacred eyes and sacred ears, because it's very easy to get just all in the head and have it be black and white. And it's like, well, hold on. First of all, I agree. This Pluto Capricorn business and the United States coming up on a Pluto return, we're young, and our young make mistakes, right? But as we see with those sacred eyes and ears that things can be different personally, globally, there's a softness that happens to it. And then we can watch it unfold with a little bit less stress and regression and tension. But, we have to do things like this. We have to talk, and we have to talk to each other, and we have to present these concepts and the idea that we can trust the intuition, we can trust the good things. Yes, defend yourself, defend your home should you need to, but there's also this place in between the worlds that I think we are right now, for sure.
Yes, yes, so beautiful, so important to have those conversations. Another Gemini Sagittarius spirit guide friend that I have, she's reminded me that those conversations that we often are most afraid of having are some of the most important ones to have, because they will change the situation. And I think leaning into that, the faith over fear is really going to help have those conversations.
Ah, Nura, you're just fab. You're just fabulous.
Feelings mutual. I really love this conversation.
Me too. Yeah. I just feel like heart good about it, like, even if we listen to this, I think 2 years from now, I think there's some heart good in this conversation for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Completely.
good. Okay, any closing thoughts from you? And also, where can people find you?
People can find me at nurarachelle.com and also on Instagram, moon.mystic. And I have so many thoughts. Virgo, focus them. I really want to, send out this big hug to everybody. I see you. I see all of the efforts. I see your struggle. I see your victories. You're doing your best. We all are. And just, remembering that we're not alone in this. We don't have to be in this, this hermit space in a negative way. If we need that solitude and we need that internal reflection, perfect, take it. But, if you're feeling lonely or you're feeling, that you could use some support, there is support too. So I think reaching out and, faith over fear, trusting yourself, trusting your process, trusting your connection with your higher self. I think that is a really big theme this month.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, you guys, thank you so much for showing up to today's Eat and Greet. Hopefully it's been a delicious hour for you. If you're watching on the replay, I would love to hear what you think down below. And I'll make sure that, yes, that we had our snacks. We didn't even get to fully snack, but you brought a snack. So you're getting like an extra gold star for me, for sure. I will make sure all of Nura's details are in the description box down below with the Autumn Equinox special link, and also the link to the podcast. If you haven't come over and checked it out yet, feel free to do so. All right, we love you guys, and we will see you in the next Eat and Greet, which will actually be next week on the 2nd. We will have Becca Tarnas here, and we're going to debunk some of these archetypes. Some of them have gotten a bad rap. So we're going to talk about that and bring them back into a little bit of alignment and reality. Okay. All right. Bye, everybody.